Bigfoot, skunk ape, grassman, Sasquatch. Just a few of the names given to the primate-like creature said to roam the woods and remote areas of North America. Tales of this elusive being go back for hundreds of years. Is it mere myth and legend? Or is there truly something more tangible to this phenomena? Join us on this journey as we discuss the science behind the encounters, the research, and the evidence, keeping you updated on the latest findings, ideas, and hypotheses. Arrogance gets us nowhere, and closing one's eyes doesn't make things disappear, nor less real. Today's myth could be tomorrow's reality. It's time to make this subject matter less taboo. Welcome to Monster X Radio. Bigfoot without the BS. Hey, welcome to the show. This is part 2 of a 3-part series with my guest and fellow Olympic Project member, Todd Hale. If you didn't catch the first episode of this series, make sure to check it out and give it a listen. Todd and I continue our conversation on some of the exciting recent developments that we have been working on, and we share our most recent in-field experience. Fast forward again.
Yeah.
You and I had been looking for a camp. We found a less desirable camp. Then we come across this newer camp. We decide not to set up our tents, just park our vehicles, do a little exploring. I heard a possible whoop, an odd whoop, odd vocal of some sorts. And I'm never going to say it was Sasquatch. I don't know.
Probably turned out to be one because
given what we are going to get into, I got my opinions on that.
there was a lot that went on. Yeah.
So yeah, there was a lot that went on. So Todd, I hear this whoop and I come back to camp. You didn't hear it. And obviously you're deaf.
Mm-hmm.
You're setting up your backpack. You're getting, your stuff together. I come back. I do the same thing. I get my backpack, my walking stick, make sure my GoPro's on. This was just supposed to be a quick trip down to the ravine as quick as we could and back to set up camp.
It's a quick scouting trip for the next day. Next day is the big day.
Exactly. What was supposed to be a short hike in, exploratory hike, initial hiking for Todd to see the ravine, turned out to be quite the experience. And so, as we're going down the trail there, we're making sure our gear is going, most of it.
Yep.
Not perfect, but, we want to be semi-prepared in case something were to happen. Whether it's, if a bear jumps out in front of me, I want to have a GoPro. I just want to be prepared.
And this is on Friday, February 21st.
Right.
I'm working 410s on my job. So luckily enough, I told Shane, I am going to have 3-day weekends from here until who knows when. And we can hit it, right?
Yeah.
Head out on Fridays and stay till Sunday, or I can come home Saturday, whatever we want to do. If we ever have any audio or video, whatever, and I just want people to know this is Friday. It's not on Saturday. It's not on Sunday. I just want to be clear.
Yeah,
it's on a Friday afternoon.
You know what? I'm glad you brought it up.
People say, oh, you should have been at work. No, I'm working Monday through Thursday right now, 10-hour days. So.
Yeah. Yeah. We start on our way along this trail. And when I say trail, it's an old logging road. It's an old skid road. It's not used. It's got grass over it. But the huckleberry and the salal, it's encroaching upon it. At times it gets very narrow. Sometimes in the middle of the logging road, there's quite a bit of salal growing on the ground. So it's not used. It's an old skid road. That's it. But it ends. It ends at a certain point, and then you peel off and you just get into the tall huckleberry in the brush, and that's what we did. I couldn't remember the exact route that Derek and I had taken. I remember I was going, I think it was here. But you know what? I know the ravine's over this way. Let's do a straight shot out there.
Right.
I just want to do a straight shot there, straight shot back, I'm looking up. I can kind of get my bearing from the trees, our way in and out. That's what we did. So we didn't take the exact route that Derek Randalls and I had taken originally to when we found these possibly older
It's
nests.
very difficult to even find a route.
Well, there really is. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, once you hit the end of that little skid road and you peel off, I mean, there's no trail. You're bushwhacking. From there on, you're bushwhacking. There's no trail. There's no game trails in that area.
See.
No, I mean, the stuff's higher than your head. The huckleberry's higher than your head. You're bushwhacking, falling over, you're tripping. Sometimes you're intentionally crawling.
Yeah.
So we just made our way, and you were following me, obviously, because you've not been to this area. But I knew basically where the ravine was at, and that's all I wanted to do. We're kind of talking about there. We're listening. It was a super quiet time out there, too. When you stop, it's super quiet. When you're going through the brush, you can't hear anything because you're smacking branches. It's smacking you in the face. It's hitting you. You got your gear rubbing against stuff, your clothing. But when you're moving, it's hard to hear. And we did that. We periodically would stop. And I stopped to get my bearing sometimes. And so we get really close to where I think the ravine's going to be.
Yeah.
And I come to find out, I actually kind of missed the large ravine. Where I took us was actually to a spot where there's a smaller ravine that leads into the larger ravine. It's a bit of a finger. So as we're getting approaching, it looked kind of appealing to me, but I thought, oh, shoot, it's right over here. I was wrong. It wasn't right over there. The ravine was actually a little more to the left. What happened was Todd's coming up behind me, and I get to an area where it starts to decline. I pass this cedar, and Todd's coming up behind me, and I hear him say something like, I just fell down. I just ate it.
Yeah.
And he did. I heard him.
Slippery. And you're stepping on roots and everything.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when you will fall out there. So he ate it, and I was about to giggle. But I was several feet in front of you, and I passed this tree, and you were kind of still on the one side of the tree. And all of a sudden, I started hearing down the hill, but to my right, which would have been about a little bit higher, I think, in elevation than where we were once we dipped. A little bit, it was a little bit higher in elevation. I started hearing movement, and I thought, oh, shoot. And I listened, and then I got a little animated on the GoPro. You can tell because I think I dropped a few bombs because I was hearing something that sounded like it was approaching us, and it was loud. It was big. So in my head, I automatically ruled out a lot of things. But in my head, I'm thinking bear, and we're being bum rushed by a bear. We spooked it. Mama bear, maybe cubs, who knows? So I'm like, whoa. I said, shut up, be quiet, sort of thing. Listen. And then I realized that it was, if it did indeed approach us, it was no longer approaching us. It was backing off, but it was going down the hill, down the slope. It sounded methodical. It sounded slow, but it was breaking, either stepping on sticks or breaking sticks or limbs. And it was loud. Todd, you're deaf.
Yep.
And you could hear it.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, it was that loud to me. What I'm kind of stoked about is that I got GoPro video. I did not see anything at the time, nor did I see anything after the fact. But what I was happy about was that I had the initial experience on GoPro. But what I'm unhappy with GoPro is the volume. It doesn't pick up really great. I still got to go through it and see if I can pull any audio out. By the time I realized that it doesn't pick up great audio from a distance.
No.
Not like what we were hearing. Todd did break out his phone and get some good sounds that came from that area. But anyways, we walk up this area. We have something moving. It's big. I think it's approaching us. Then it backs off. Todd and I are hearing this. It's moving down below us. And I couldn't tell if it's moving again away or not. I think it was paralleling us. At the same time, it wasn't just like crack, crack, break, break. It would be occasional stuff. You know, sometimes it'd be break, break, silence, break, break, crack, silence. When you first heard it, Todd, what was running through your head?
Initially bear, obviously, and I drew. It's only the second time I've drawn a weapon out in the woods. Yeah. Second time ever. The other time was up by Greenwater. But you drew, I drew. This thing was moving, and it sounded big.
Yeah.
I could hear it. And you're just everything is happening so fast. It's like 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. This thing is like, it's not coming towards us. Okay. You know, the initial shock of it, something's moving. Oh crap. Then it's not coming towards you. So you're having to recalculate like what's going on. You're kind of looking left, looking right.
Right.
And it's moving to our left.
And you got to understand too, folks, that this area is so thick. It's not as if we're like in a wide open area.
You can't see.
You can't see. I mean, it's so thick with huckleberry, very tall, and it's got slopes and different little creeks. We're at an elevated position at this point, still lower than where we were initially hearing the sounds. And, I mean, all bets were off that time. I thought we were going to be bum rushed by a bear. It was much bigger than, say, a deer.
Mm-hmm.
It was definitely not an elk. But I couldn't rule out bear at the time. I could not rule out the bear, but I had my suspicions. I'll be honest with you. I had my suspicions based on what I was hearing.
I only thought bear for 2 seconds, maybe. Yeah. And then we're dealing with something else now because the direction it's moving.
It's moving. And here's the thing. The direction it was moving, a bear will typically just vacate the area. They'll leave. They'll just leave. This thing not only moved down below us, at times slowly, because you could hear it moving occasionally, but it would stop. This thing ended up kind of, as we're listening and talking, coming up with a game plan, it started moving up the hill and behind us, up and around us. That's not bear behavior.
It flanked us.
And
it was loud.
And I remember Todd and I were talking. I said, well, shoot, either there's two of whatever this is, or there's one, but it's flanking us. It's coming up behind us. And I said, we're at a lower elevation. I want to go back
We're
up.
at a disadvantage. And then
absolutely.
we were back to back with our guns out.
Yeah,
because you're still facing where it came from kind of deal. And I'm facing where the new sound is. And that's when I asked you, what do you want to do? We're kind of trapped right here. During that time, I did make a little iPhone video. I'm going to be clear with that. I made an iPhone video during that with my gun in my hand and my phone in the other, because I'm thinking if something charges us, I'm recording it. And I'm going to shoot it.
Both. Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, it was just one of the scenarios where all bets are up, but it sounded massive. It really did. And I've been in that area so many times, and I've ran into bear, I've heard bear, seen bear. This was quite different, and that's what kind of blew my mind. So I was contemplating just completely backtracking out of that area, getting out of there because we're at a disadvantage. But what Todd and I did was we back up the hill, back to back, kind of listened for a while, evaluated the situation, and Todd said, hey, why don't we go back down and check out where we originally heard this thing? And I'm thinking, I don't know if it's a good idea or not, but let's do it. Sure. Let's do it. So, after not hearing for a while, we creep back down to where we originally heard this thing. And as we're approaching it, I'm leading, and I come across a log on the ground that looked like something large had stepped on it. It looked fairly fresh. Oh, it's kind of interesting. And we creep back up a little bit further. We're starting to get up onto this little finger, this little knoll where we originally heard this thing come from.
Oh, and there's definitely a wide trail where something has been passing through. Everything's smashed down.
That's what tripped me out.
Yeah.
As I'm leading up there and I see this one initial log that looks like something big had stepped on it, smashed it. We keep going further and further up this hill, up this little finger. And then I start to notice what I think I described it as like someone took a weeder through this area. It was just a well-used trail. Things been plucked. And I thought, wow, this is fresh. And that day, at that particular hour, though it was starting to get dark, the sun was still out and was kind of gleaming through the trees right there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking up and I'm seeing a lot of devastation on the ground. And I'm telling Todd, oh man, something's moving through here. It's fresh. It's fresh. Wow. As I'm looking up, raising my eyes off the ground, off this trail, and I start to scour the area where I think this thing was in, what do I see? I see huckleberry snaps, breaks from a foot off the ground to several feet off the ground to 6, 7, 8 feet off the ground, and they're all glistening in that sunlight. And I knew right away those were fresh, and they looked exactly like what we found in the original nest site that we were led to find. Exactly the same sort of snaps and breaks. And I thought, holy freaking moly. And I got goosebumps, and I'm thinking, is there a nest up here? We stirred something up.
Yep.
And I was thinking that could not have been a bear. I mean, couldn't say it absolute, but for me, giving the behavior, what it did, the sheer size and mass, I was thinking, no, that's not a bear.
Yeah.
And I was really glad that you really wanted to go back down and check it out. And that's what we did. And we get down there and I see these huckleberry breaks. I flipped my lid. I was like, holy moly.
Also, that down tree, I could see it from my vantage point, and all the bark was off. All the moss was off.
The down tree in the, well, what we now call the new nest site.
Yeah. That whole section was just white with something had been rubbing on it or using it. I didn't know at the time, but I'm like, look at that. You know, there's some kind of animal's been messing around with that tree a lot.
That whole area was impressive right off the bat. I'm like, holy moly, we just found something unique here. I knew we did. I knew it right off the bat. And then I had two things going through my head. One, start looking down. I don't want to step on an impression. I don't want to mess this area up. And my second thought was, what did we stir up? What's still here? What's not here? What's coming back? What time does it get dark? And I thought, we need to bring a third person, fourth person out here. I definitely want to get a hold of Derek. Derek needs to come out here. And so I made the call to backtrack out of there after seeing what we saw with some of these huge huckleberry breaks. Oh, man, which is amazing. I'm still amazed by it.
I think as soon as we went up that little rise and saw the huckleberry, we knew what we're dealing with, which we thought we were kind of 2-3 seconds into the deal, but then we knew.
Once we got in there, I knew what we were dealing with, and it was excitement, adrenaline, and also a little bit of fear, because I was thinking, this is all fresh, and if this is fresh huckleberry snaps, like really fresh.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about the original nest site, why the huckleberry was snapped off. Well, it's snapped off to make a nest. So I'm thinking fresh breaks. Well, maybe there's a fresh nest here. What's in that nest? Just something want to protect it, because a lot of work's gone on in this area. I'm thinking, let's come back tomorrow. So we slowly made our way out of there.
Well, I've always thought the nests, the medium-sized nests, and even the smaller nests were for young.
I agree.
That's my opinion. And you think of that whole scenario, and you're 20 feet away from a baby, possibly, or young, you're in big trouble.
That was exactly my thought, because I thought I'm of the opinion that Sasquatch doesn't always make nests. They probably do more like beds and, just lay down and find areas to shelter in. I think the nests are made specifically in areas, predominantly, not all the time, but where there's a creek, where there's a nice salmon run, where you have berries and grasses and all these other things going on. You want to hunker down, either have a baby, or you just had one and you just want to get your strength back and all that, especially in the month of February, where sometimes there's still snow, cold weather, but right on the cusp of spring.
And that's the month that Derek estimated the old nests were built 4 years prior.
Exactly. And there's
February.
But once again, you have that month up in this area. Not every year every year you do have a salmon and sort of fish run up there, but every couple of years it's really prevalent. Now, here's the other interesting thing about this. We kind of had between Squatch Metrics, and I know Derek had thought about this, maybe it's a cycle.
Yeah.
Maybe it's like every 4 to 5 years, maybe 4 to 6 years. And here we are pretty much 4 years later. Here's the thing too. We literally stumbled onto this. Literally, I could have gone 20 feet or 30 feet either direction. Totally missed this spot. That was a freak thing. What was not a freak thing was us being in that area. And, we would eventually discover that probably the following day.
We know the pattern. We know the area. We know exactly where these things should be. And that was our plan from the beginning, when we were going to hit it hard, in the spring and the summer, is just forming a grid and exploring these ravines until we find something. And I mean, holy crap.
By God.
We found it the first day.
Which was crazy. Like I said, sheer luck. We could have gone either direction that day and completely missed it. And maybe that thing would have just stayed there and hunkered down, waited for us to leave, because it let us get pretty dang close.
Yeah.
I mean, it let us get really close. It wasn't until I passed that tree and started actually descending, and I was going to go right and get onto that little plateau, that little finger kind of stood out by itself.
I think it knew we were there. Obviously, you can hear us trudging through
a mile
the brush,
away. We weren't sneaking.
I think it was just waiting for us to keep on going by. And when you turned that direction towards it, that's when it said, "I'm out of here." It was going to do one of two things. come after us or bail, and it bailed.
It bailed, but it kind of did in between that. It kind of bailed and went around and checked us out. So we get down there and this thing does what it does. So we decided to head out.
Yeah.
So we get back to camp. We finally make it back to camp. It's getting dark now. It's getting dark. I was really glad we made it back. Though we had lights and all that, I just didn't want to traverse in that area in the dark.
I don't even think I could go through that area in the dark.
No, you probably couldn't.
Man, it's bad enough for the day.
So we make it back to camp, and I finally get a hold of Derek. You know, he had, once again, we're talking on Friday. He'd been working all day, and I get a hold of Derek, and he said, okay, I'm going to come out tomorrow morning. I'll bring Tori with me. That Tori's Derek's wife, and she's a part of the Olympic project as well. And we'll go check this out. And I'll be honest with you, I was enthusiastic with Derek. I told him everything. I don't think Derek really captured on to my excitement or what I think we found.
Well, there's a lot of false leads in this business and a lot of hope, and you're let down. And
I know, but Derek knows me, and so I was like, yeah, Derek knows me. I don't get excited often. Very rarely do I get excited. And he's like, okay, cool, awesome. Yeah, we'll come out in the morning.
Yeah.
And I off the phone, like, I thought he'd be like, I'm coming there tonight and all that, but no, it didn't work out that way, and that was fine. I knew when he made it out there, he was going to be blown away. I knew it. You and I, Todd, were down there. We stopped. What we saw were huckleberry breaks, snaps, a well-used trail, some worn-off logs.
Yeah.
We could tell something been in that area, but we did not venture any further because I didn't want to step on tracks and possible impressions. I didn't want to damage the area. I wanted to leave it pristine.
No contamination.
And I was kind of hoping the thing would come back. Mm-hmm. That was my goal. I was hoping it would come back. Well, we're back at camp. I talked to Derek. We go over that. He's going to come over the next day. Todd Hale and I placed our audio recorders out and built a little fire, made a meal. What time did we call tonight, Todd?
Oh, I don't recall exactly. I'm guessing around 10:30-ish.
Yeah, it was early night.
I never stay up that late on these trips. I used to, but I don't do that anymore. I just want them to come in. Like, as soon as we go to bed, I try and stay awake in the tent, and hopefully they come into our camp. And
I remember waking up, I believe it was around 2:30, and I was fumbling for my cell phone. I was hearing something move up kind of behind your tent. And where our tents were spread out a few feet apart. And I was hearing something move around. I got out once, flared around, didn't see anything. In this area, once again, we had quite a few pine trees in that area that were rather thick. I never saw anything, but something was moving around out there. Don't know what it was. I can't say. Could have been a deer, for all I know. It just, that hour, it was so quiet and something was moving around. So I'm thinking, I'd better go out and flare. Go back to bed, and that was kind of my evening. I know you had something, you want to talk about the tossing of the pebbles. Which was
on my audio.
Audio.
I had an audio recorder on the tire of my truck, which I always do. I always have one in camp on the tire of my truck, and then I set one outside of camp. Sometimes I have up to 4 audio recorders going. But that night, something was throwing pebbles at my truck repeatedly during a certain period of time. It was pretty late, around close to the time where you heard something behind our tents, but one of the pebbles hit my exhaust pipe, and it was loud, and I picked it up on audio.
Yeah. And that wasn't a heat ping. What your truck was?
No, I was going to talk about that. I talked to Cliff about it. I've dealt with all that. I've done a lot of audio for years, right?
Yeah.
And I talked to David Ellis about it. I didn't know it was my exhaust pipe at the time. I told David Ellis, something's hitting my truck with pebbles. And he's like, are you sure it wasn't the engine cooling down? All that. No, my truck had been parked for hours and hours, like 10 hours. So one of the...
And it was consistent.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's so obvious something is throwing pebbles and hitting my truck. It's crazy. It's super loud and show up on Sonic Visualizer. And one of them hit my exhaust pipe. I didn't know what it was at the time, but I told David Ellis something was really loud. It was so different than the other ones. He's like, well, next time you go back, he's like, pick up the same pebbles around your truck and start throwing them at your truck bump or your wheels. And I did that, and it was the exhaust pipe where it comes out behind the back tire. And it was an exact match. I'm like, that's what it was. That's what it was. So that means whatever was throwing the pebbles was between my truck and our tents on the inside of camp, because the exhaust pipe was aiming towards our tents. I would have thought it would have been on the tree side, like the other side.
that makes perfect sense to me, because if you think about it, all the little pebbled stuff that we found are going to be close to in that area. It's going to be a little bit more difficult to find them off trail.
Yeah, so that means this
area.
thing was between us and my truck, inside the camp area. It wasn't on the other side of the truck, the woods side. It was on the
there's no way
side, which kind of blew my mind when I discovered that.
I know, and that's just so. We had that happen that night. We didn't see anything. We heard some stuff. The audio stuff you found later on wasn't. You discovered it that night.
Something also was messing with something in the back of my truck, and I don't know what it was.
Right.
Because there's like hot dog forks and an axe. There's a bunch of stuff I just leave in the back of my truck with the tailgate open, and something moved something in the back of my truck. Can't say it was that.
Right. Right.
I mean, with all the stuff going on, who knows? I mean,
back of your truck is kind of interesting,
isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm like, it could have been a raccoon or a possum, but then something's throwing pebbles at my exhaust pipe, and that's right there in the open.
Yeah.
And it wasn't in the trees, not in the cover. It's kind of, I have pictures. I mean,
well, I was gonna say, I wouldn't blame something you own a Ford, so I was surprised there wasn't boulders being tossed at it.
Yeah, Ford, the best truck.
I'm kidding. All right, so we have the next morning, wake up, make breakfast. We're waiting on Derek. Derek actually didn't show up till after 10.
It's pretty late.
We're waiting around.
Surprised.
We're like super excited, ready to go. We're amped, we're pumped, and we're waiting on Derek.
Yeah.
And I've come to find out, no, they parked in a different area and decided to hike in. And you don't get like the best reception out here. So they decided to hike in from a different vantage point. And I'm thinking, what the frick? And they eventually made it out there. Here's Tori and Derek coming down this area. Oh, hey, thanks for joining us, guys.
Yeah.
We're all ready to go. You guys already had breakfast? Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty funny.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. So, we get going pretty quick. We find the area that we entered in, that you and I had entered in the night prior, and start hiking in. Got a little twisted around. It wasn't perfect. I remember thinking, it's a straight shot here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was wrong. I messed up a little bit. But here's the thing. I think we messed around for about an hour. Eventually make it into, I started recognizing stuff, as did you. And I'm like, okay, we're here.
It's hard to get through that kind of terrain, and you think okay, there's this tree, we recognize this tree, but oh boy, when you're coming into a new area just for like the second time, everything looks the same.
Absolutely. I remember getting up on this one snag. I'm thinking, oh, here we go. And I knew we were there.
Yeah.
And then I get up to the tree, and I stop at the tree that you tumbled behind, and the one that I went past and then heard, traversing down the hill, and heard what I heard originally.
Yep.
We got to that tree. I tell Tori and Derek, I said, we're here. We have found it. So I had waited for them everybody to get right up there, and we start trekking in. That part was easy after that. I knew exactly where to go.
Oh, yeah.
Because I could see the little knoll there, the little finger. And I start going, and as I'm going, I see that first log on the ground. Once we start going towards the finger, I see that log that something large had stepped on, and I purposely avoided stepping back on because I wanted to show.
Rotten. I want to make that clear.
Yeah, it's rotten. It could have been a lot of things. It could have been a bear. But it was quite a heavy impression. But it leads right up to this path of destruction that I wanted to show Derek and everybody else and Tori. And so when Derek saw that, I could see his interest start peaking. And then we get up, and I stop at there was another log that actually had a large impression on. Someone had stepped on as well. Another dead, rotten log. And he sees this, and I said, now start following that log there. Follow your eyes up. And he's looking at it, and I said, it's like a weed eater came through. I mean, it's like something devastated this little area. And it's maybe a foot and a half wide on the ground. And Derek starts traveling, and I said, now look around you. And Derek starts looking up, and I forget what he said, but it was kind of like a euphoric moment because he started seeing all the huckleberry breaks.
Yeah.
And then, light bulb, Derek, boom, yes, this is interesting now. And then we went further.
Yep. And?
Okay, so we go further. And we went further than Todd and I had originally gone the night prior. We started going further and further in. And that's when I think Derek and I almost simultaneously, no, we were seeing the breaks and really starting to see some of the really tremendous huckleberry breaks, over an inch in thickness, some peeled, some broken, some 4 feet, 1 foot, some 8 to 9 feet off the ground. We're starting to see all this and take it in and going, okay, this is, yeah. Well, off to our right, kind of where you saw that fallen tree, that log that was off the ground, maybe, 4 feet off the ground?
Yeah, that really disturbed me the day before.
Yeah. And
it was
really,
obviously not natural. And I actually recorded it on my phone that first day, just because I'm like, I don't know if we're going to get back here. I don't know what's going on, but I'm going to document this on some video at least. So going in there with Derek, I'm actually filming with my phone also because I wanted his very first impression. I captured all that too.
Oh, yeah. So as you're filming, Derek and I walk up there. We peer over, and right in that area, that general area of that log that kind of stripped 4 feet off the ground, there on the ground is an absolute gigantic pile of huckleberry boughs, limbs on the ground.
Brand new.
Brand spanking new. And it wasn't even quite formulated into a nest. It was more of a pile, but you could see the beginning stages of it. And Derek and I look at each other, and he goes, we did it. You guys did it. You did it. We found a new nest, and actually newer than you could imagine. It wasn't even quite a nest yet. It was being formulated. It was one of those big high five moments. It was awesome when I saw that. And I had a feeling, we both had a feeling that we were going to find a nest, and there it was. One big-ass pile.
Everyone was freaking out. Derek really freaked out and actually
scared Tori. Yeah, scared the bejeebies because he was just like, woo, yeah.
It was very exciting. Very exciting after all these years.
It just validated for me our whole experience on the day prior, and that we were looking in the right area. We actually came across, and I don't care if people want to argue Sasquatch did it or not.
I don't care.
I don't care either. I know I'm almost 100% sure exactly
with all the stuff we pulled out of
there. I'm like 100% sure what made that thing.
Exactly.
The point being is we replicated, not a nest per se, but one in the making, no doubt about it, after all those years. And we actually stumbled across it based on our consistent research in these areas, our consistent mythology, our pursuance of trying to find another nest, whether new or old. And we found quite a gold nugget, one that was quite probably in the making of it, with the culprit doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, that just blew my mind. We explored that area some more. There was an oddity in that area. There was a fallen log, very large log with a little bit of a dent in it, with a huge pile of dirt. And the huckleberry was kind of spread out. I mean, it was a lot of huckleberry. At first I thought, where did all this huckleberry come from? But once, after we spent some time in there, I realized there was a lot of bough breaks, a lot of huckleberry breaks from all different heights, and from 5 feet away to 20, 30, 40 feet away in that whole area. I mean, it's being brought to that one little spot. And there was like this bit of a cubby hole that was so odd to me at the time. And the huckleberry was actually being almost like shoved in there to the point where it was almost blocking the entrance of this hole. So odd.
I've never seen anything like that in any of the books, any videos, I've never even heard of this kind of thing ever in this research.
Right.
And I just kept standing there going, what is that hole? What is that hole? It's so weird. And besides everything else going on, where it's like, there's so much stuff going on. You're just standing there. There's too much to take in, put the pieces together like one by one. And remember, while we were there, when we got there, something was about 40 yards out circling around us in the bush towards our trucks.
We heard that, and once again, didn't see anything, but definite movement out there. I heard it more than once.
Yep.
And
I have that on video too.
Quite the documentarian there.
Well,
Mr.
I learned
Todd
my lesson.
Attenborough.
I learned my lesson on a few trips in the past of not documenting with video, audio, pictures, and then, I rather have stuff that I can just delete or get rid of. I mean, you never know. What if something was there? What if something came up on us? I want to film it.
Yeah. Better looking at it before and being prepared.
Yeah.
We've all learned the hard way.
And this is before I had my nice little GoPro set up.
Oh no, you're quite set up now for sure. So we didn't take anything. We did a little bit of observatory stuff. We observed the area. I did notice some hair on some ranches. I noticed some possible impressions, but we really just were we didn't want to encroach on there or really disturb anything. And so our next approach when we're out there was, okay, what's our next step? And, collectively, so, well, we got to reach out to Dr. Meldrum.
Yep.
He's been involved with the original nest site. We got to get him out there. I know Derek and I had talked a little bit about Cliff. And I wanted to reach out to Cliff and tell him. And so that was kind of the goal. Definitely reach out to Meldrum, see if he can come out, and then we'll get Cliff involved too at some point. After researching that area a little bit, we peeled out of there and went back to camp with just so many questions. And then kind of make a game plan to head back out there ASAP. That Sunday, we all peeled out and left. It was raining. I remember the weather was kind of nasty. So, yeah, we take James Milling out there Monday morning. Derek Randalls and myself, as all three of us went out there to do a little exploring. James wanted to see the area. So we went out there. We hiked in. Once again, we didn't touch anything. We were just kind of exploring. We wanted to see if we can find anything new, if there's any other nests out there. It was just the one in construction. And so while Derek and I were at the main nest site, James went off looking around down the hill, all around. I don't know, maybe 45 minutes later, while Derek and I are kind of doing our own little exploring, James Milling comes up and goes, "Hey, I found something interesting." We're like, "Well, what'd you find?" Because Derek and I were pretty confident we maybe found a good impression. So, well, come check it out. So we leave that new nest site area, the little finger there, and we head up and around and then back down the hill. Basically, Todd, where you and I heard this thing circling up around us, basically where we had stood days prior. That's where James went down because I told him that, I think this thing circled up around us. So he said, well, let's go check it out. So he went down and checked it out. And he actually found 2 hand impressions on the slope that basically exactly where this thing probably was. There was a left and a right hand. One was really impressive in person. The other one, you can make it out, but it was in obviously the debris, the leaves, but you can make it out. You can make out a palm, definitely the fingers. But the left hand that was behind a log, that one was super impressive. And so, we were just flabbergasted. Here we go. It really backed up our story, what happened to you and I. It was a good-sized hand. It wasn't absolutely massive, and that kind of ended that. We covered it up because we were going to cast it, and we decided then to get Cliff Barrickman out there. We were kind of going back and forth. Do we take soil samples from it, so we can do some eDNA or something on it? Well, this is right around the time when this whole COVID thing started kicking off, and that was our initial plan, was to take soil samples, and then stuff started going south.
And Meldrum was going to fly out.
Yeah, I didn't even touch upon that yet, but yeah, Dr. Meldrum was going to fly out. We had plans. Basically, he was ready to jump on a plane, fly out, and that eventually got canceled because really by this time we're in March now, and the whole virus thing took off. We actually made the call. We said, I know Derek really made the call there, but we didn't want Meldrum to take the chance to come out, be stuck on a plane, and we just didn't want to take the chance. And so we didn't have Meldrum come out. We decided to bring Cliff Barrickman in, and that's actually when Cliff actually came out. And it wasn't his first time out in this general area. Like I said, he's been working with us and been out to the nest site before. But that day he came out, Todd, you came out as well.
Yeah.
And you spent a lot of time with Cliff down. Cliff got to view the nests, the new nests. He got to look around. But he also he got to cast the one hand impression. We decided to cast the best of the two at the time, which was the left one.
Yeah.
And you spent a lot of time down there with Cliff.
Yeah, I documented it. I filmed that whole thing. A lot of photos. I think you should describe in detail a little more where the handprints were.
So basically, where there's a game trail that this thing obviously would have walked on, and where we walked on and stood, and the hand impressions were above this game trail. It looked to me like this thing had either crouched down and put its hands on there or use that to get up the hill, because further up the hill was another game trail right there above the right hand. There's a large tree there, and then there's a game trail that goes up the hill, which would have been the path I would think where it circled up around us. That would have been the path it took, and it was disturbed. And the pitch of the slope, I mean, it's pretty steep. I mean,
oh yeah,
yeah,
it was really steep. And while Cliff was casting that, I was looking around and then noticed that the destruction straight up that ridge to that trail, all the ferns were broken, destroyed. You know, it was clearly something big and just moved straight up that hill, and it led, and that's where the handprints were.
Yeah.
When it got to that trail, it stopped and put its hands there. It's pretty incredible, because that's what we heard the initial day, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, it really backed up what we encountered, what we thought was happening, what was transpiring. It really backed it up. And the hand impressions, especially that left hand, which, you know, I'll definitely share pictures. Cliff's already shared it, I believe, on Twitter. He casted it. It was extremely, just about everything we've casted out there has been extremely difficult to cast, not just because of the substrate and the soil. A lot of stuff's on hills. And so I've experienced casting, but Cliff is 10 times better than I am. And so he brought up some material to cast this up on a slope. He was ready to go. Anyway, he had to use a lot of plaster.
It was like 15 pounds.
Yeah. And the majority of that went to keep it from sliding, you know, the very back end of the palm area. He had to build that area up and move forward, because, you know,
we had to build a huge dam with those collecting little sticks. And the bottom part of that cast is really, really thick because it's such an angle. Yeah,
he's cleaned it up. I know he's made copies and he's cleaned it up a bit so that huge chunk is not there. I mean, on the original.
Yeah.
Sure. But the hand impressions, I know Cliff was enthralled because the thumb on the hand is at lower set, which, it's very primate-like, very gorilla-like almost.
His hands are not the largest we've seen, but they're much larger than human. And it's the first handprints I've ever seen in person like that. I mean, they're really, really impressive.
Yeah, the fingers are very thick. They're not super long fingers. Exactly what I would imagine a Sasquatch hand would look like. And very similar to other hand casts out there. Along that day, we did discover some possible other impressions, not in that area, but actually in the nest area itself. Doing a little bit of exploring, we did find hair, which a lot of this hair I still have. I have a lot of hair in baggies. Now that this whole COVID thing, not jumping ahead here, but as it progresses, there won't be any DNA work done on this stuff. It'll probably be just visually analyzed. I know for a fact I got some known animal hair, definitely, known critters, but some of it's got me very, very curious based on where we found it, how we found it. When you find hair 9 feet off the ground in a broken huckleberry.
Well, I was going to say, some of the hair I found was about 6 feet up.
Oh, yeah.
And some of those little forks of the huckleberry.
Backtracking a little bit. So Cliff casted that hand impression, and Cliff casted that. And I know he had to let it set for a while. Derek and I had to take off. And so we did. We peeled off. You stayed around with Cliff. What else did you guys do out there while we took off?
We were just looking for hair in the huckleberry and impressions. It's kind of funny. I did find hair that you guys had missed. But the funny thing was, 15 minutes after you guys left, Cliff and I heard 2 clear knocks. And mind you, all the different days we've been going there, we've heard knocks, we've heard whoops, and there's a lot of movement going on. It's all the time. That's like more than I've ever heard in my life. And so it's kind of significant that we heard those knocks when you guys got to the trucks, because the first or second night we were there, we heard knocks around our camp when someone would come or someone would go. And you guys were leaving and we heard 2 knocks, and there were 2 you. I don't know if that's just coincidence.
Right.
Or it was pretty interesting because it was loud. I heard it. Cliff and I stopped what we were doing. We were kind of whispering, just listening. We didn't hear anything else after that. We did find impressions, feet, not hands, that
right,
and foot impressions, and a lot more hair. I collected hair. So we were in there probably another hour, and then we peeled out of there. we went a different way back. I kind of got turned around. It's really not that easy to navigate. I made a kind of a left when I was kind of supposed to go straight when I was like halfway out of there. But we did find, we didn't find anything having to do with Sasquatch. But we did find that spring, and we were looking for tracks in there. We didn't find anything, but
it's a great fresh spring.
I mean, we were bushwhacking for a while to get back to the road.
Oh, you can get turned around in there easily, but
I was apologizing. Like, dude, I'm sorry. I obviously made a wrong turn, but the trucks are this way. I know what direction we're going at least, you know.
It's happened to the best of us. But you guys obviously found some other stuff, and you came back, and there was other things for Cliff to cast. The other right hand impression, which was, you know, a little more ambiguous, but it was there, present, but it was in that leaf litter.
Yeah.
There was one or two possible foot impressions, but we told Cliff to hold off because we want to see how we want to approach this, not disturb the area. We want to see if this thing came back too.
Yeah.
So moving forward, you know, Cliff takes off, you take off, and then we start looking into this. And like I said, this whole virus thing, the COVID thing is really, it's picking up pace. Obviously, Dr. Mellon's not coming out. We're looking at trying to get samples, collect stuff. The weather is about to turn south. We're looking at heavy rains approaching. I'm thinking, shoot, you know, do we not go in there and just sit back, or do we go in there and collect what we can now? And Derek and I had this conversation. I remember I was talking to Cliff, and I said, well, maybe we should just go in there and finish casting this stuff. Collect the bedding material, look for more impressions, and cast the other hand cast. So Derek, you know, said, yeah, let's do this. Derek couldn't make it out. So I called Cliff up, gave Cliff to go ahead to come back out if he wanted to. He's like, oh, heck yeah, I'll come out and cast that hand impression. And we'll the second hand impression, we'll collect stuff and look for more impressions. He basically turned around, came back up the Wednesday, same week, and hiked out there. Started casting that second hand impression. It wasn't, like I said, not the best of materials to cast in with the leaf and debris matter, and still on a slope. But, you know, Cliff was going to do his best to get it casted. Cliff always says, you know, when in doubt, cast it. And so he did cast it. And that was down the slope and where we think this thing circled up. We casted that. Then we decided to go to the new nest site find, which is up the hill a ways, up on that finger. And we go back in there, and I did bring sacks with me in case we were going to collect debris. So I call up Derek again and said, Derek, you know, and the weather's, it's starting to, you know, turn. We have Cliff out there. We're finding impressions. I'm thinking, you know what, let's just collect this stuff now. I have gloves. I can mask up, take the proper procedures to get it all collected properly. And I look at Cliff and I said, I think we should just collect this stuff now and scour this area for more casts, more impressions. Called Derek up just to make sure he was cool with that. He said, just go for it. You know, right now, I'm not sure what's going to happen with this whole virus thing. And so let's just get it done before the weather turns and we start losing stuff. So I start collecting some of the samples of the huckleberry. I start taking some of the huckleberry breaks, taking those samples. Then I start focusing in on, while Cliff is scouring the area for hair and other impressions, I start taking samples of the nest, the actual nest itself. And there's a burrow, which we kind of touched upon earlier. There's a burrow there in a log, a large burrow that a lot of this huckleberry was covering up. And while I'm collecting this material, I can't believe how much material is there. It's a couple of feet thick in spots. There's so much huckleberry. Cliff finds an impression up kind of near where you found some hair, Todd.
Yeah.
He finds this impression and he tells me to come over there, and I check it out, and it looks definitely like a foot impression. Once again, in the leaf matter and whatnot, I was like, it was going to be difficult to cast, but, you know, Cliff brought like 50 pounds of hydrocal. We had loads of hydrocal, so we're just going to cast everything we see. He starts casting that one, and I go back and start collecting more of the nest material, all the huckleberry stuff.
Which has tons of hair in it, too.
Tons of hair in it, yes. Tons of hair in it. And I noticed that where this burrow is, that's in this fallen tree, it's a large burrow. It's been dug out. There's a large pile of dirt off to the right of this burrow. Large pile of dirt. And where the huckleberry is kind of half covering up this pile of dirt. and I see what looks like a hand impression. It looks like fingers, but just the tops of it. And I couldn't make out, for sure that if it was a hand impression or a paw print. I couldn't quite make it out, but it looked like a hand impression. So I told Cliff to come over and check it out. Cliff goes around, being careful, he goes around the other side of this tree to get a better view of it. We're trying not to trample stuff. And Cliff looks at it and goes, it looks like a hand. That's interesting. So we pull back more of the material, and you could basically make out some fingers and will look like basically part of the palm. It looked like something had basically put its hand down and used it to steady itself while maybe it was maneuvering the huckleberry branches around. Or now this gets more interesting. So you got this possible hand impression there. And as I'm collecting material, Cliff's got that other impression casted, the one that's a couple yards away. So he comes over and starts helping me bag up this material. And we're being very careful because we don't know what's underneath the huckleberry nest. We don't know what's underneath there. And we're gathering it up. And lo and behold, Cliff notices what looks like a foot impression underneath the, several layers of this huckleberry, stuff. And it looks like a definite foot impression. And it's mere feet away from the hand impression. I mean, it was very impressive in person. I don't know if the cast turned out that great. I know Cliff took video. We both took video. We took measurements. It was, I believe, around 14 inches.
Yeah. So
he starts casting that one. I'm moving more material, being very careful. And we notice what looks like another foot impression. So maybe actually, at first we thought it was a left and a right foot. Now looking at it, it looks like it was a right foot and another right foot, meaning that this thing had moved positions. Basically had its foot down on the ground and then probably stepped again next to it. So it's a right. But they were both very clear in person, right, or foot impressions. And we're like, man, this is crazy. We were pretty excited about it. And Cliff goes ahead and casts that one as well. And then we focus on the material. I start bagging up more material. That day I probably bagged up maybe 5 to 6 paper bags. And I got these bags from the Home Depot. They're like big long leaf bags. They're big. They're huge. And so I got a lot of material in them. And I probably filled up, I think that day, 5 bags. And left a couple there. When we eventually made our way out, we both carried a couple out, but it was an absolute nightmare because you're trying to carry casts. We did multiple trips, taking the casts out and the bagging material. But we get to the point where Cliff decides to cast that possible partial hand impression on that soil that was next to that den or that cubby hole. And we cast that one. And once again, it was on a slope, so very difficult to cast. You had to use a lot of material again to cast it. I was really curious about this den, this hole there. And my gut feeling to this day is that was probably not used by a Sasquatch. I have a feeling that was an old bear den, and the huckleberry literally was shoved all the way up there. It was almost like either cover up that hole or I don't know. I mean, what are your thoughts on that den?
My initial thoughts were that's where a juvenile or a baby possibly could have been. This little cubby hole shoved full of huckleberry, and it was like a little bed. It was like a cradle down in there. It was weird.
Yeah, it was weird.
I've never seen anything like that.
It's very deep, but that's typical bear behavior. And I got a feeling that was probably an old bear den, and either the Sasquatch moved in or the bear vacated. I don't know the answer there, but
right.
That hole was about covered up, and you could barely see it with all the huckleberry. You can make it out, but once I started moving the material from that area, and we're talking about, a couple of feet in depth of huckleberry branches, and then also it was over 7 feet in length as far as how far it was spread out all the way up to that den. And when I started moving that material, I just couldn't get over how much huckleberry. I mean, I got to wonder. What else was interesting about that whole area was that there was another really deep impression that was very similar to the original nest site find, that bowl-shaped. I don't know if that was, off to the left on the other side of that fallen log.
Yeah.
Don't know if that was the beginning, if that was going to be a nest there. I was thinking, I'm like, okay, you got this really deep bowl where something's either laid down or wasn't dug out, but laid down. It was really odd. It was another odd impression there that I think might have been, there was so much material. What I'm getting at, there was so much material gathered. I'm wondering if it was a gathering and then going to start formulating nests in different spots, or it was just going to make one big one. I don't know. I mean, I can guess all day, but there was so much material.
It was pretty mind-blowing.
It was unbelievable how much was collected from all around that area.
You should mention the smell.
Yeah, I'm trying to think who smelled it first, because Cliff smelled it.
Cliff. And then when I went in there, I said, it smells weird in here, like sweet.
In there,
musty.
it was also on the some of the material itself.
Right.
So you had that, there was just so much material. And I remember Cliff, when he was out there, as he got closer to that, the little den area, but also not in there per se, he goes, man, it's a weird smell. It's almost like a tobacco smell. And I started smelling it too. I'm like, wow, it was such an odd smell. It was almost like he said tobacco-like. And we just couldn't wrap our heads around it. I'm not quite smelled anything like that before, especially in the woods.
I've never smelled that before. I also want to mention the first day we went out there with Derek, I smelled a stink. I don't know what that was. And that's actually the second time I've smelled that in the nest area. It's like a cloud of stink. And I don't know what it is. It's not us for sure. I mean, I have no idea. People described that before, and I've experienced that twice now out there. It's an animal smell. I don't know what it is, though. It's gnarly. It just like hangs there in the air.
Right.
But the smell in the little cubby hole was sweet and musty. It was interesting.
Yeah, like I said, it's like a sweet tobacco smell, almost like chew tobacco. It's odd. It was odd.
I even picked up the huckleberry and just smelled it. Another look like, oh, maybe it's the huckleberry itself, but it's not.
Oh no, it wasn't. It was something.
In the den.
Yeah.
Whatever
that area. Is. Yeah. Another oddity, obviously. No, we collect. Cliff and I finished collecting the material. Everything's casted. We do a couple of trips in and out of there. We don't know how everything's going to turn out. Obviously, we go down and collect the right hand down the hill. So we did 2 or 3 trips in and out of there, both to collect more casting material and to bring casts out as we were finishing them up and they were drying, and to take a bag or two out at a time of the debris of the nest. And we pretty much wrap everything up that day. I mean, I didn't get all the nesting material out that day, far from it. There was so much.
We collected a lot more the following Friday or Saturday.
Yeah, when you came back out, and I was actually back out there with Derek.
Like 2 days later.
2 days later, and we collected some more. I mean, so I mean, in my garage, even right now as we speak, I've gone through some of it looking for hair. Obviously, there's going to be hair from all sorts of animals, but I'm collecting every piece of hair I can find. But right now in my garage, I had like 10 bags of debris that I've about 8 yet to go through, and that still is not even everything. I didn't collect every single piece of huckleberry pile or what. There's still more out there, but Cliff and I did finish up what we thought was a good day of casting 2 more hand impressions, and we head out, and Cliff takes the cast with him because he's going to let them set for a couple of weeks and then clean them up. So I was totally happy with that. They're in good hands. He can make copies. He can let them set. They're in good hands. So, we hike out, part our separate ways. He goes back to Oregon and I go back home. And then that following Friday, you came back up, Todd.
Oh, yeah. It was getting intense. Like every weekend we're back there. I'd work the 4 days and come back to the nest site. And when you're on that roll and stuff's going on, they're there. It's just, it's actually kind of mind-blowing.
Well, thanks for listening in on the next episode of Monster X Radio and our final installment of this 3-part series. My guest Todd Hale and I delve deeper into our experiences in the field, and I share some of the audio we've obtained from our recent investigative efforts. Stay tuned. And remember, today's myth could be tomorrow's reality.
Monster Edge Radio.